Okay, so part 2. This time we're going to rig the wheels so they turn correctly, regardless of the direction that the vehicle's travelling. So in order to do this we need to do several things, but the first thing I want to do is just create a control object for my rig. So you can create that however you want, but I'm just going to use a NURB circle and I'll just scale it up a little bit. So this is going to be my main control for my vehicle. Obviously you can create a fancier one if you wish, and I'll just rename that control main. Now if you look at the channel box, you can see now I've got some scaling values in there. I've still got my make NURBS node, so I can use our handy script we created last time just to freeze the transforms and delete the history. So I've got my control object is nicely zeroed out, it's at the origin, everything looks good. So to make this control move our rig around, the temptation is just to follow a hierarchical pattern again, just to drag the chassis onto the main, move that around. But what we'd do there is we'd have the same problem as previously, and also you've got this problem where you select your control, all your geometry gets selected, which just doesn't look very nice. So what we do, actually there's another problem. If I just show you, just delete those layers. If I select my geometry and just create a geometry layer, display layer, let's call that geom, make it red, and then if I want my controls, I'll just temporarily deselect. I'll create a display layer for my control objects as well. Controls, let's go blue. So I've got these two display layers. What will happen is, at the moment, if I hide my controls, they hide. If I hide my geometry, that hides. If I, however, make any part of this vehicle a child of my control, the display layers no longer work. So if I hide my control, you can see that all the geometry hides as well, because the display layers are based upon hierarchy. So the children of this curve, i.e. the geometry, inherit the visibility of their parent, in this case the control object. So we don't want to do that. Let's drag that down. In fact, we want to break this hierarchy up a bit more. I want to drag the wheels out of the hierarchy. So now I've just got a chassis object, the 4 wheels and a controller. And rather than using a traditional parent relationship, parent-child relationship, I'm going to use a parent constraint. So if I select the control, select the chassis and just say constraint parent, just reset, and we want to maintain the offset in this case because the position of the control is different to the chassis. Now if I add that, I still get the parent relationship going on, so I can move my chassis around, but I can also hide my objects individually. Oops, I need to just add those to the geometry layer. Looks alright. So the next part is to have this control the wheels as well. At the moment it's got the chassis, so that should be alright. Now I could set up a parent constraint for these as well, but what would happen there is we'd end up with exactly the same problem as we ended up with in part 1. That is that it would only work in one axis. So what I'm going to do is create a pseudo parent relationship between the control and the wheels, and that involves us breaking apart the orientation and the position constraint. So instead of creating a parent constraint, we'll create 2 constraints. We'll create a point constraint and an orient constraint, and they will affect slightly different parts of the hierarchy of the wheel. Now at the moment the wheel only doesn't have a hierarchy, it's just a single transform node, but I'm going to introduce a hierarchy to it. So select the wheel and group it to itself. So go down to group and just reset, and the only thing you have to change here is just to make sure that the pivot is at the center of the geometry. So the group object has its pivot point right in the middle of the wheel. It's exactly the same as the wheel itself. And then I'll just rename this group to something sensible. Group wheel front left. And I'll just do that for all the other groups as well. Sorry, all the other wheels. Now when you're doing any repetitive task, it's always tempting just to create a little script for it. So in here you can see I've created my script, and it's not a complicated one, it's just a single word group. So I'll just drag that up there and I'll rename that just so I know what it is, GRP. And what I want to do is just group all the wheels to themselves, so group and group, and I'll just rename these as well. So they're all renamed. We've got 4 groups each with a wheel underneath it, and this is where the clever bit comes in. So we're going to create 2 constraints, all to the control, but each constraint will affect a different bit of the wheel hierarchy. So the first one we want to do is to set up an orient constraint for the wheel group, not the wheel itself, the one above it, its parent, the group. So select the control, select the group, and just say constrain orient, and just reset and apply rather. And you can see there we've got an orient constraint for our group. So I'll just do that for the others. So main, apply, main. Notice I'm only doing it for the groups, not for the wheels themselves. So now if I rotate this, see the wheels will rotate with the control object. Obviously there's a slight problem in that the positions aren't changing, but we'll fix that now by position constraining the wheels themselves, not the group this time, the wheels. So select the control object, select the wheel, and create a point constraint. In this case we do need to maintain offset on because the control and the wheel aren't in the same place. We'll just apply that. And we'll do that for the other wheels. Apply, apply. So now each wheel has, the wheel itself, the wheel geometry, has a point constraint, so should follow the position of the controller with the offset we provided, and its parent will have an orient constraint to the control. And what that means is the wheel itself will inherit the rotation of its parent, which is the group, but maintain its own local axis, if that makes sense. Best just to show you. So at the moment if I rotate, it looks like it's parented. If I move it, the wheels are working. If however I change the axis again, it should still be broken, and that's because the wheels are still using our old expression. So if I just edit this expression, enlarge that a bit, you can see that the wheels are still looking at the chassis translate, and that's not what we want now. We want them to look at themselves. We want to look at how the wheel itself is moving. So if I copy these over, just edit that, what you should find is as I move the control, the wheels themselves are rotating, and this will work for any angle. You can travel up, down. What you probably want to do is turn on is change your move tool. Just look at object space, just make this a bit more clear. So if I move this up in object space, you can see the wheels rotate in any direction. So that's the first bit fixed. Got nice wheel rotation regardless of the angle of travel, and we've got this nice control all zeroed out, so I can just reset easily. Right, so that's part 2 finished. In part 3 we'll look at turning the wheels and the handlebars based on a new attribute.